Welcome to Basketball Talk Pro. I'm Ron Ekker. The subject of today's segment is actually taken from the first chapter in my book, in Volume 1. And when I refer to something that I use in the book, I just want to warn you about this. There's no way I can give it the same kind of detail that I give in the book. So if I say something to you that appeals to you, or you'd like to know more about, the best place to go is to my book. The book, all three of them are very inexpensive, and you should have books in your library anyway. But anyway, that's where it all started, and the first chapter is called The Demise of the Play. And I refer to, in that book, that the play in basketball, the use of plays, has deteriorated tremendously over the years. And I have to refer, of course, to the NBA, because for a couple of reasons. I was in it, I saw a lot of it, I have access to a lot of information from it, and secondly, it is easy to get. Colleges are pretty good, but it's a little bit more difficult. It's not as consistent, but I did do quite a bit of work in the last year on colleges and high schools also. And what I found is there's very little difference. So the information I'm giving you is very relative to basketball, no matter where it's played internationally or in our country, and because it's just different in the level of player, but they're playing against better players, and in other areas they're playing against, there may be weaker players, but they're playing against weaker players. So it's just relative. But how I came to the information that I'm going to give you, and is more clearly expounded in the book, is that I used to do a lot of this with when I was a head coach in different places, college and pro, and I always would meticulously evaluate our own plays as well as our opponents. And so I got to be very comfortable with it. And then in the NBA, where I first really came into some information, I was the major scout for the pro, for the scouting the NBA opponents for Dallas. And I did, in 1 year, I did 93 games, and I recorded every play. It's a huge amount of plays. It's 6,000 plays. And it was there that I realized that plays, and they were better than they are now. As I recall, there were somewhere around 68.68 points for each play run, and that's the measure that we use, is how many points do you score for every play you ran, because that's what plays are there for, score points. If they're not doing that, then there's something wrong. And then that was in 1999, but I updated it with 43 NBA games again in 2009, and the only difference was plays had deteriorated. So using that, there's some information that came out of that, and I'm going to simplify it as best I can. The reason plays are important is that you have access to so many times where you use them. On the average, in an NBA game, 48 minutes, and you can just scale it down for 40 minutes at college and so on, but the percentage will remain the same. I'm going to guarantee you that. And but in the NBA, they have an average of 55 times a game that they line up and run a play, usually called by the coach. That's pretty much 75% of the game that they do that. So and most of them run plays at that time. So those plays need to be effective, but they're not. What we've learned is they're pretty ineffective. And if the coaches would carefully evaluate their plays, they'd learn that. But from my experience and the fact that they keep running the same plays that don't do very well, it makes me believe that they don't know how effective their plays are. And I think a lot of coaches are in that position, and if I can't tell you anything else in this this is the 51st game, you should know whether your plays are effective or not. And the only way you do that is to sit down off the film and find out and be honest with your evaluation, and I will talk about that in a little bit. But in the latest 43 games, the teams averaged 54.3 times a game that they lined up to run a play. Maybe not always did they run a specific, a real play. Out of that 54.3 times a game, they only got 32.3 average field goal attempts. All those plays, and they only got 32 shots off in plays. And they only shot 43% on those shots. And here's the killer. They only averaged counting for 26.6 points a game. And you can say, well, God, NBA teams score a lot more than that. And I will get to that. There's a reason for that. But it isn't that plays are scoring the points. They're not. And so the question is asked, two questions. Why aren't plays more effective? And the second question is, where are all the rest of the points coming from? If they're only scoring a third of the points, where are the 2/3 of the points coming from? Let me take the first question first. First of all, I've got about 8 or 9 reasons that through a lot of study and talking to coaches about this problem. Here's one of the 8 or 9. I don't have it right in front of me. I'll get them to you all, or you can count them. Sameness. Everybody's running the same thing. There isn't much difference. I mean, if you know how to defend floppy or middle pick and roll, or now that little Princeton baseline screen thing that they're doing, I mean, you're going to see that most of the year. You know, you figure this out. If you're in the NBA right now, you're going to see the middle pick and roll, your team and your coaching staff is going to see it between 800 and 1,000 times before the end of the season in that 82 game. Now, you should get good at defending that play. So sameness has a factor. Predictability. Plays are predictable. And especially when you're running plays without many options. So consequently, you know, anybody can get every play of every team right now. If you just want to work at it. And in the NBA, they got 5, 6 film guys that'll take care of it for you if you want them to. So you know the play, so you can prepare for the plays. Well, it's more difficult to be effective with a play when they know pretty much what you're going to do. Predictability is a major factor in the ineffectiveness of anything. If they can predict what you're doing, they get pretty good at doing it. The third one, it's usually against a set defense. Realistically, it's always against a set defense. When you can set up and run a play is usually after you take the ball from out of bounds, either made basket, made free throw, turnover that isn't a steal. You're coming down against a set defense. It's hard to be effective against a set defense. Out of bounds plays, for example, are very ineffective because the defenses are sitting there. They know what you're going to do, and they're all set. It's more difficult to play defense when you aren't set, and so they are run against a set defense. You have to take that into consideration, and the key to that is the fourth one: execution. Execution of the plays are in most teams, very lethargic. You can almost look at the players' faces and see, oh no, this one again. You know, it's kind of, they don't get much success from them, so consequently they go through the motions. There's a lot of that, not only in the NBA, but in every level I've watched. They don't have the preciseness, the execution that are required against the set defense. And then the number of plays, the next one, I think it's 5. Yes, it is 5. Has an effect. A lot of coaches run a lot of different plays. So consequently, they don't get much practice themselves in each of those plays. And the players don't get a chance to learn the nuances of a play, learn the little things they need to do to make those things effective. Now, I understand experienced players like in the NBA that have played, they're 31, 32 years old, but they still are affected by this. And if you look at, if you scout or get on the films and take a look at plays, whatever level you're at, they may run a play once or twice and never run it again. That has an effect. The best example I can give you is the Lakers and Chicago Bulls with the triangle. They ran it every time. Jerry Sloan with the Utah Jazz never changed plays. They had a set number of plays that they practiced them constantly. And they learned, those players learn how to make things happen in a game off of those plays. Then selection of plays. I once worked for a guy and I kept careful record of all the plays, and we had 10 plays that were good. We had about 40 that were not good. But we ran the 40 more than we ran the 10. We ran the 10 very little. I figured it out. If we had the same percentage, if we reversed it and ran the good plays that were running well, doing well, as much as we ran the not so good plays, we probably would have ended up in the playoffs. It would have made that much difference in our effectiveness. You need to know your plays, and you need to select the plays that are effective. Shot selection also is a factor. Some very poor selection of shots, and that destroys your play. It's a low percentage shot. You're not going to score as many points, even if you get it off the play, which is what I'm talking about, not in other areas. So shot selection is very important. Taking shots you can make and giving up the ball to players that can make their shots. Everybody can make a shot, certain shots, in any place you're playing. It's the patience to wait and shoot only that shot. The last one is two-man plays. Some of them call them go-to plays. Two-man plays are easy to coach. You're just coordinating two people. that's easy. Plus, if you're running pick and roll, I mean, everybody knows it. You don't even have, I mean, all you got to tell them, or give them the name of the, whatever you call them, the middle pick and roll or side pick and roll or whatever, they know how to do it. They've been doing it. But two-man plays isolate three players, where you can say, well, they're out there, they can open up things with their shot. Well, if one guy's opening up things with a shot, you got two guys standing around. And that allows the defense to play games. It's easier to coach, but the effectiveness is very questionable. And five guys working as a unit, that's a different story. That puts more pressure on the defense. And so those are the things that I've noticed, and I feel pretty strongly about that. They affect the outcome of those plays. Now, in the book, I also give you some solutions for that. I can't go into them in this length of time that we have, but there are solutions, and I really hope that somehow plays can become a more effective part of basketball offense, because they really are what we use the most. Plus, when they're done well, they're really an art. They're beautiful to watch, and they're beautiful to see. They make a lot of difference in basketball. It's the one place you can have more control over teamwork. Now, I did said I would talk to you about why the NBA scores so many points, or any colleges or anything, when they're not scoring them from plays. I wrote a whole book about this. The whole theory is what I call the third element. It's what happens after the play, after the fast break, and when they don't run a play. Freelance. No matter how you spell it, it's freelance. That period of time. The play breaks down. Most plays break down with 12 seconds left. Not always, of course, but most of the time. Well, it's in that period that players freelance. I call it improvisation. They're improvising on their own, and they're very effective because they're not predictable. They're not doing the same thing. In fact, they're doing something different every play. It's not a set defense. They are attacking in all the ways that are better to attack. So that's where the points are coming from. 70% of all the points scored in an average NBA game are scored in those areas, not in plays. But we need to resurrect the play. But it takes some really coaching. Certain guys do it, but you have to have discipline, and you have to have well-defined plays, and you can't just keep copying from everybody, because that's what's happening. Everybody's doing the same thing. So my hope for you, is that you can develop your plays, because they are important, very important, so they are effective, and take the time to study, and take the time to evaluate your plays honestly. In the volume number 1, at the end of the 3rd chapter, which I talk about statistics, at the end of that chapter, I try to define as clearly as I can how you grade plays and how you grade breakdowns. It's not easy if you don't know the play, but if you will kind of follow the directions that are there, you will get pretty good at being accurate. No one is 100% accurate because we don't know the opponent's plays that well. We know our own. We should be 100% accurate on those. But even the players on your own team run them a little different every once in a while. You'd swear it wasn't the same play. So take a look at those things because I just feel they're very important. That you start to work at evaluating your team and your opponents. I think you'll see the result is more wins. I'm not saying it's going to make you a champion, but it could. But certainly I know that the result is that you're going to win more games. So that's it for today. We'll see you again in a couple of days, and thanks for listening.